All right, my friends, thank you for joining me once again. This morning, you probably woke up and got out of bed reluctantly with a million different things in your mind, didn't you? You might be one of these individuals who likes to make a to-do list, these things you want to get done by the end of the day. You enjoy scratching through them or checking them off to make sure that each one is accomplished one by one before the clock strikes 12. I'm not like that. I've never been like that. My mother is, though. But you might be thinking also more long term. You have ideas that you want to see come to fruition by the end of the week, or perhaps the month, or even the year. Okay? But nevertheless, you know that in order to get things done, to reach your goals, to get where you want to go, sometimes you have to give up things. All right? In order to achieve gain, you have to be willing to let go of something over here on the other end. Isn't that right? I mean, it might be a matter of giving up some of your time, your money, your attention, other resources. You might have to override your own impulses or your desires, your will to serve yourself. And that's difficult. And that's one of the things that keeps us from moving forward. But there's always this dichotomy of gain and loss. They go together, don't they? Let me tell you about a man I met the other day that I found very inspiring, very impressive. And I hope that his example will kind of give you an idea of how you need to approach things. Because oftentimes we're wondering what we're doing wrong. And in reality, you might not be doing so bad. But I'll help you put it into perspective by someone who has been somewhat successful at working loss and gain together. But first, let me tell you about another man whose name is Kevin. Kevin walked into a bar in Boston and ordered 3 shots of scotch. He would down them, pay for them, and then leave. The next day, he would come back and do the same thing. And by the third day, the bartender couldn't help but question him and ask, well, why 3? What's the deal with that? And Kevin says, I have one for me and one for each of my brothers. One for Dennis in Seattle and the other Hank in Dallas. It makes me feel like we're still drinking together. Oh, well, that makes sense. Makes sense. He left, and about a month later, Kevin came back, and he only ordered 2 shots of scotch. Now, the bartender was really curious. He says, look, I hate to ask, but did one of your brothers die? Kevin said, oh, no. No, I just decided to stop drinking. Now, listen, you may not think that joke is that funny, but it does illustrate a good point here. That in order to drink less, Kevin realized he needed to do something. He didn't feel like he could quit cold turkey, so he decided to back off a little bit. Okay? Now, those of you who don't have much of a sense of humor will critique this joke to death. You'll say to yourself, well, he's just lying to himself. He'll never quit. But, I mean, you can make it whatever you want to make it. And yes, he may be kidding himself, but he was onto something. It's really hard to go into anything full throttle, whether you're trying to get into shape, you're trying to get into a new job so you can make more money on the side as a side hustle. If you're trying to be a better husband or a father, or whatever the case might be, you might have all these ideas about how you want to get from A to Z, but it's very difficult. And oftentimes we just jump in head first, and we think that we're going to completely immerse ourselves and everything's going to work out. And most of the time it doesn't. And you've already experienced that, haven't you? But Kevin understood that it was probably better to back off just a little. Now, the whole thing is done in humor. The whole thing is said in humor, at least. Excuse me. But, backing off a little bit is better than doing nothing at all or trying to go cold turkey all the way. Now, I know there are plenty of stories out there about people who have done that. and they love to tell and retell their story over and over again. But it doesn't work for everybody. You go home, you might have been at a meeting, or you've listened to a sermon, or you've watched a speech on YouTube of people who have done similar things, where they've just gone all in, all chips in, and everything worked out. It's amazing. It's almost a miracle. But it doesn't work that way most of the time. When the movie What About Bob came out some years ago with Bill Murray in it, everybody kept quoting him, so to speak, a little bit when they would constantly say, baby steps, baby steps. You know, it was always about taking baby steps to get from one place to another. And that's oftentimes what we need to do. And we don't want to do that because it doesn't give us what we think would be immediate gratification. But it is the best way, is to dip your toe in the water instead of diving in head first. Gradually acclimate yourself to the process. When you jump on a chin-up bar, if you're 40 years old and haven't done a chin-up in your life, don't be surprised if you can't do it at all. But you might think to yourself, I'm going to do 100, or I'm going to do 500 today, because you saw somebody working out. It really moved you, and you thought, this is a great idea. I want to look like that. But it's not going to work, is it? You might eke out one. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine the sight. But anyway, nevertheless, you've got to acclimate yourself to things. Things take time. And you might need to hear this. This might be exactly what you need to hear today, because you're embarking on something, right? Maybe overnight you had this idea. Don't forget, wade in slowly. Let me tell you about the guy I met in Walmart. I had to go buy a new belt. I've been putting it off for a while. But I needed to get one. Luckily, I didn't need to get a bigger belt. I needed to get a smaller belt. Okay, so I'm back there in the men's section. And a man and his little girl came up, and he was looking for a belt likewise. And he was a taller man than I. And he had a big belly. And he was treating this little girl very tenderly. I wasn't sure if it was his granddaughter or his daughter. He was at least old enough she could have been his granddaughter, but a lot of people have kids at an older age. And so we kind of struck up a conversation, because we were both doing the same thing at the same time. When you're trying on belts in the store, if you want to get an accurate assessment of where that belt's going to fit, you have to take off the belt you're wearing and put the new one through the loops. Otherwise, you could be misjudging it and get home and realize you bought the wrong size. So we were both doing that at the same time, and then we were remarking upon it and saying that this is what she needed to do. He's like, yeah, I know. Listen, it's really hard for me because I've got to zip tie my pants together. I lost 80 pounds. And I'm like, wow, he must have been really, really heavy. And he said, yeah, I've got to zip tie my shorts together. I said, well, maybe you need to get some new shorts while you're in here. He goes, well, I'm not done losing weight, which is why I don't want to buy new clothes. I said, oh, that makes sense. And he says, yeah, because I'm trying to get this belt, because I've got to take off all this stuff. And so he was kind of telling me about his frustration in the buying process, the shopping process here. So anyway, I couldn't help but ask him. I said, well, how did you lose 80 pounds? I'm always asking people about their stories. But he said, well, I was 340 pounds. 340 pounds. And I've been doing what I'm doing since January. And he said, what I did was, first I cut out all sugar, and I started intermittent fasting. I got on a 16-8 protocol, which is where you have a 16-hour window in which you do not eat, and then you have an 8-hour window in which you allow yourself to eat a couple of meals, whatever you want. And he said, which is what I do, but he said, I cut out all sugar, I started intermittent fasting, 16-8 protocol, and I do a lot of walking. That sounds like a great plan. All very doable. These are all very achievable goals. I said, well, how much do you walk? He says, I walk 35,000 steps a day. What? I mean, I thought 10,000 steps is a lot. Sometimes that's hard to get in. He says, well, I work from home, and so it's a little bit easier for me. But He says, I had to get a treadmill because I can't get out all the time. I walk a quarter mile, like, I can't remember what he said, like every hour, or he has some kind of a plan. It's like where he walks a quarter mile at a time. He doesn't get 35,000 steps in all at once. He just works it in little by little. I said, well, how did you get up to 35,000 steps? And what does that amount to? He says, about 15 miles a day. Wow. He says, yeah. He goes, because I started off with 1,000 steps a day. And then the next week I went to 2,000 and so on. And so he increased it by 1,000 every week. He was motivated, but he understood he had to take it little by little. And I told him, I said, I respect you a lot. And thank you for telling me your story. And you know what? If you respect yourself a lot, make a game plan, but take things little by little. This might be just what you needed to hear today. All right. I hope that's helped. Don't forget to subscribe, donate to the channel, put a link down below, and make sure you like the video. All right, guys, I will catch you in the next one. Leave your comments down below and tell me how this has resonated with you. In the meantime, be wise.